Joining Carl this week is Jennifer Kern, Chief Marketing Officer of QPOS, as they discuss their annual State of Digital report covering the rise in digital sales, technology spend, and AI use cases across the industry. For all QSR and fast casual leaders, this is a must-watch on this special edition of The Digital Restaurant.
We are back. The Digital Restaurant is here, and we have a very special episode. You all know my good friend Jen Kern here. Jen, good morning. How are you?
Good afternoon, Carl. I'm good. How are you?
You're right. It's the time difference between where we live and all the rest of it. What can I tell you? I'm glad to see you. Big news, of course, today with the release of your State of Digital report. We've been talking about this report, I don't know for how many years on the show. And each year after I feature it, and whether it was with Meredith before, I always kind of feel like we could have spent a bit more time on it. And you kind of called me up a few weeks ago and you said, why don't we? And so today we're going to go through it in a little bit more detail because there's a lot of really interesting stuff in it. What was your take on the report this year?
You know, every year there's always a couple things that pop out at me and really surprise me. This is our 7th year doing it, by the way. And just FYI, it's not, hopefully by the time the recording comes out, it'll be out. It's not out quite yet. So this is like a little sneak peek. But over the 7 years, there's always one or two that really comes up and you're like, oh, wow, that's surprising. Because just when you think you know where the industry's headed, there's always just like a little turn. And I was really shocked that 73% of restaurants in fast casual and QSR will be invested in AI this year. So last year was 50%, and there's another, 23% investing this year. So it's up to 73%. And of course, we saw that's a little bit higher for the QSR brands than the fast casual brands. It was higher for QSR over fast casual, but I thought that was pretty darn high compared with, of course we're hearing all about it, but compared with, we've been waiting for the value to show up, right? And we know we've been in testing mode in a lot of areas of AI in restaurants. So I was just kind of surprised to see that.
I agree. I mean, I thought it doesn't surprise me actually too much about the number because I think there's so much pressure on executives right now to be doing something with AI. And in many ways, I'd love to ask how many of them actually seeing value from AI? How many of them actually have done something and actually going, oh, thank goodness we've done that. That's changing the way in which we run the business. The theme of the report was the year of serving smarter, right? And so this theme, I think this core narrative through it is that restaurants are moving from digital experimentation to operational execution. And I think that really seems just to be the theme in general across the industry right now, right? Yeah. We've gone from this place where folks are going, should we really do this? Should we put dip our toes into the kind of bath as such, where now people are going, oh, no, we need both feet in, but now we need to get better results from it. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. I mean, this came up in several questions where these major challenges surfaced around operational execution and just having inefficiencies across that operational food chain, if you will, right? Like there are just so many areas of breakage, whether it's order inaccuracy, lags with the order. So really looking at that efficiency piece, which has been coming up for quite many years. But so moving from that experimentation of point solution, like what's the next new flashy thing to try and test and pilot, to, okay, we need to execute better so that we can scale this stuff responsibly and profitably.
The efficiency phase of digital, right? I guess that's really what we're entering. Let's get into the report. I've got it here, so let me bring it up. And so there are 6 key trends that I think we really want to touch on today, right? The first one was around the guest experience, and the line you have here is guest experience leads spend, fragmentation limits impact. And let's just go into a little bit more detail as to what was really being referred to here. And so the representation just shows how digital guest experience, 57% there, is the top area of investment. Now, what is the digital guest experience, Jen? What do we mean by that?
Well, it's really the full combination of how satisfied is the guest across channels and how consistent is that experience. We've seen in past years that order inaccuracy is much higher on digital orders, and therefore guest satisfaction is up to 10 points lower on digital orders, digital channels. Yes. We've been told this by customers too. So we know that this has been an area that brands have been trying to improve for many years, that digital guest experience. How do we make it more seamless and consistent, less fragmentation, less breakage points, so that we get that retention that we're looking for and we get those guests coming back?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Look, the thing that I always say to folks is, the term digital experience, the digital guest experience comes up a lot, but the reality is that a lot of our guests are not just guests that experience the brand, the restaurant brand, just through a digital channel. In many ways, it's an omni-channel experience today. And for a lot of guests, the first time they engage with the brand is actually through a digital channel. So if you have a poor experience through a digital channel, it's the first time you're experiencing that brand. Even if the restaurant on-premise experience is perhaps amazing, you're going to end up potentially not being able to get that customer to come and try you again. And I think that's why this is so critical. And it is why it's linked, I think, to loyalty, because more and more guests are omni-channel in nature these days, because it depends on the occasion.
Right. Absolutely. So that was one of the top investment areas. I mean, I like to point out that point of sale modernization was number 3. So there's investment there across some of the core systems in the restaurant as well.
I really like seeing this, Jen, about just the barriers that are against that guest experience piece, right? So again, coming back to this piece around operational execution, look at that, 55%. The question obviously comes to mind, like, well, why is that? Well, I think it's actually represented in the second bullet as well, these fragmented systems and data. It doesn't matter how good ultimately one piece of technology is, but if it's operating in a world of fragmentation, it's always going to be held back. It's almost like trying to operate with one hand behind your back in some way. So I think that's where these numbers very much kind of link together in some way.
The story really starts coming to life here, where you see that drive towards better efficiencies. Every single guest matters so much now. If you can't upsell and retain them, you're really working against yourself. There's all the stats out there about declining traffic, declining guest traffic, especially foot traffic in store. So operators need to do everything they can to retain and satisfy that guest. But when you have the fragmented data, the channel experience from in-store to digital is going to be very different, and you're going to be challenged. And we'll see that in the next one as well, some of the instability challenges that brands are having.
I agree. I mean, look, the challenge is that there's so many different tech vendors that are supporting a restaurant operation today that it only takes one rotten apple, or one apple that perhaps isn't in its optimal state, to cause challenges across the rest of the stack, right? So this complexity, I think, is now becoming the bottleneck across restaurant groups. It's nothing new, but I do think it puts the question in a lot of folks' mind as to, how do we get past the fragmented tech stack? How do we get to a place where actually that isn't the thing that's not enabling us to create a better guest experience? Let's go to the next one. So the second trend that you had was, let me bring this up here, the digital scale exposes operational vulnerabilities. And there's a number of things here which I thought were interesting, but each digital channel, of course, does create a level of operational risk. Each digital channel introduces integrations, order routing, menu syncing, payment flows. When you think about the fact that digital channels have grown massively, in many ways, what the report is showing us is it's also introduced this level of instability. And I'm curious, where are operators struggling the most, do you think?
Well, what the data shows here, and it's hard, to see depending on what size screen you're on, but on the right, the areas of instability that they're most challenged with are not terribly surprising, but third-party or digital ordering, followed by the first-party ordering. And those are the two areas where we see, I think it's almost 40%. 40% of brands in the fast casual and quick service arena are having significant challenges with stability on third-party digital. I mean, that is quite high if you start thinking about revenue and the bottom line and how important each order is and how you need to be driving that margin efficiency more and more today. So we see this. I mean, we came out with our edge computing solution over 5 years ago, and that's why we've brought that edge into the store to create that redundancy, to create that speed, and to retain those orders, so that if you have a glitch, you've got a windstorm like we have here today, your orders keep flowing. And that's where we're seeing a lot of problems for restaurants.
I thought that the list here was fascinating, because when you look across it, kiosks were a big area of attention, certainly in the last couple of years. That they're showing some level of instability at 5%. Drive-through, such an important element for the QSR audience, of course, and even 5.5% of instability there is interesting. Part of me wonders, is that part of the AI story, the voice AI space? Also, this rather plain one here, but it says 23%, none of the above, which again perhaps points to the fact there are all these different systems, right? And
Yeah.
there are all these different systems that potentially are causing this level of instability, maybe
Right.
outside of their core function of what they are trying to do themselves.
Right. Or they're not sure. They're not sure where the instability is coming from. Right.
Yes, absolutely. Let's move on to the third one as I have this up, because, you know me, I like to talk about AI. And this one I thought was fascinating. AI investment has crossed the tipping point. 73% of brands investing now or within the year, but only 9% noting meaningful impact. This is the latest in a long line of reports. MIT had one last year, I think Gartner maybe 12 months before it, talking about somewhere between 5 or 8% of Gen AI pilots failing to scale because of this ability of being able to see meaningful impact. So the report here is, let's go up and we can show that there are certainly folks that are actively investing in AI. I'm almost just as surprised by this no plans to invest in AI by 17%. Maybe it's because folks are recognizing the importance of getting that data infrastructure, that system instability sorted first. We have a phrase ourselves where we always say that when bad data meets good AI in a fight, the data always wins. So maybe the 17% there are the smart ones. But clearly there are a lot of folks that are planning to invest or are investing in it today.
I thought this was interesting because we've been hearing a lot about AI being overhyped. And that's why that 73% kind of grabbed me. I'm like, doesn't mean that the brand is like all in on AI and putting it in all the different places, but it does mean that they're strongly considering it. And like you said, we're all getting pressure from above, whether it's the boards, you know, the bosses, the powers that be, the CEOs. Everyone wants to be driving this efficiency, no matter what type of business you are, any way you can using AI. So while this data shows that it is still early, that 9%, only 9% are showing, I even thought that was kind of high. 9% said meaningful or transformational impact. 33% said emerging value. So they think the value is coming, but it's not here yet. It's still kind of a test, if you will. I think, you know, where the AI spending is going, because it really does depend on where and what, right? Why are you using it? Where are you putting it? What are you using it for? And the closest places, like you said, it's closest to the data. The closer you can get to the data, and the data better be clean data, the better its chances you have for the AI to perform. So marketing, CRM, and personalization, that's all using, you know, your data sources. Predictive analytics. I mean, could be demand analytics, or it could be kitchen, which is what we're doing, is like looking at forecasting and demand for the kitchen. The voice ordering, I mean, we've heard a lot about that in the last years, and we have several active installs of that. Like the voice ordering AI is definitely more and more becoming a use case. And then some of the other areas, you can see it's all around fulfillment, inventory, and demand. So it's places where you can really get close to the data and prove meaningful results. So I think there is a lot still in testing and experimenting, but people know that it's not going away, and you've got to figure out. It's just like, you know, when I'm creating my prompts, like there's a whole way to write prompts. Like you just have to use it and try it, and it gets better with time.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I speak to people on a daily basis about this, and I think it's really important to start with the commercial outcome they're trying to drive, right? There's a lot of folks that have been told to bring AI in the business and they treat it off to the side. But if it's not going to drive that commercial value, if it's not going to enhance that guest experience in some way, if it's not going to help you run your kitchens more efficiently, then actually you're going to put a lot of noise into the system. And frankly, there's enough noise already. So it's great to be able to see things like CRM and personalizations be at the top of that list there, because that's what we've talked about for years now. You know, in the first book, I talked about that with regards to personalization. But in many ways, for the limited amount of people that sit in these marketing teams, in the sense that they're working alongside this fragmented data, it's very, very difficult for them to really see how they can get to a true personalized engine that everyone wants to get to without being able to solve for that. The thing that I think is interesting around a lot of this is actually how AI can be utilized to tie these threads of data together to then put them on top of a system to allow the personalization to happen. So it's not just about the AI doing the actual function or the feature or the department that it's servicing. It's actually about tying things together in that regard. I put out a LinkedIn post a couple of weeks ago about demand forecasting and saying, well, how many demand forecasts are being run in your restaurant today? right? Because I'm guessing the asset management team have one. I'm guessing the ops team will have one for their labor. Maybe supply chain has one for what they're bringing in.
Right.
Are they all the same demand forecast? Probably not, right? So you've got to look at it from that angle, and if you can address it that way, then actually that's where you'll ultimately get to the commercial value. Let's move on, because we've got 3 more trends to touch on here. The fourth one was an interesting one, because I was intrigued by this. I'm curious, given your exposure at Q's, tech spend is increasing despite margin pressures. That I found to be like such a really valuable insight, because if anything, you'd say, what's the first thing that usually gets cut? And it's usually training and tech spend, but that doesn't seem to be the case in this report.
Yeah, and you can see almost half of brands said they expect their tech spend to increase this year. I was shocked. And we've asked this question in the past, and it's never been increase, right? As the #1 answer. So yeah, I was shocked too. I expected, just giving all the, cost control environment we're in right now, that it would not be. So there seems to be some acknowledgement that if you can't scale these experiments that you've already dumped a lot of money into, it's going to be really a waste of money, and the ROI is never going to come through. So I think there is let's get serious about what we've bought and what we've invested in and make it work for us.
Remind me, who are the folks that you interviewed for this report? So I'm guessing it must be a lot of QSR fast casual leaders. Is that right?
Yes. And so we have the demographic information at the bottom, but it's only, you have to be a restaurant operator at a fast casual or QSR establishment that has more than 20 locations. So we really, which we call our mid-market or our enterprise segment, is above that. So these are mostly, I think it was, if you scroll down, you'll see it. I think it was close to 60% were technology leaders. So like CTOs, CIOs. Yeah, keep going down a little bit more. 74% there. You can see our director, VP and above. Here, I'll scroll with these so I can.
And then you've got 41% in IT digital, but also nearly 23% in operations, 17% in marketing. So it's a good split across the different functions. It's not just an IT only perspective, I think is important, right? And we've got a mixture of both corporate and franchisee voices in this as well.
Right. And it's an optional survey. I mean, people don't have to take it. We send it out to our target market, and it's anonymous, but they go through and then they put their responses. So it's really, as far as I know, the only report that covers our segment of fast casual QSR enterprise. These aren't trends for an SMB, a 1 or 2 unit chain.
Got it. That's interesting. I mean, I think it's always important to take that into account as people are trying to make their own determinations as to how to read and see this information. Let's move on to the 5th trend. Doesn't surprise me as much, in the sense that digital sales continues to grow, but I think specifically in the QSR space. So if we look here, the total sales from the digital channels, and the representation for those of you looking on the screen is that red was 2025, blue was 2024. So we're seeing 57% of brands generated more than 25% of total sales through digital channels last year, which is an 8-point increase year over year. So that's pretty significant, given all those challenges.
Yeah, and you can see the red is smaller on the 2 on the left. They're trading up to the higher categories, right? They're moving up in their percentage of digital sales category. So a quarter of fast casual brands now report 40% or more of their sales from digital channels. 40% or more digital sales from fast casuals. We did see stabilization in the last 2 years, though, Carl. I mean, it only jumped by a point or two the last 2 years. The digital growth was stabilizing. It was slowing down. And then this year it took another jump. So, it was 8%, 8-point jump overall, and 10 points for the QSRs that traded up to that 26% category or higher. So the QSRs, we feel like they're finally starting to catch up, right? Like, we know they were slower to start. They have more complexity, larger count size usually. They made a big jump, which I was encouraged to see that. We know that they've been pushing hard. We've seen our customers like Jack in the Box, like changing their whole infrastructure to try to increase digital, and they've been able to do that as well. So it's nice to see that some of these really big chains that have been around for a while have been able to see some success now with the digital, and they're doubling down. They're saying we need to execute better. We need to have, less data fragmentation. And that's what I mean when I say they're sort of getting serious about the scale now.
I mean, digital is no longer alternative, is it? It's core restaurant infrastructure. It's absolutely integral. And I think what it means, of course, is it only adds more weight into the importance of things like order orchestration, kitchen capacity understanding, pickup logistics, drive-through complexity. All those things are becoming more and more significant because of that level of weight in proportion of digital orders. And digital, of course, is not just delivery, it's anything that involves an order outside of the actual restaurant itself.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, well, let's go to the last one. And the last one takes us up a level or two, and in the sense that the macroeconomic pressure is driving a shift towards smarter commerce. No surprise. I mean, look, when I wrote the first book, I was saying about the macro trends are that consumers are expecting more from restaurants when it comes to this. But of course, since that, we've seen challenges around things like cost. The rise in labor costs have had an effect on inflation. We've seen an impact on declining guest traffic. But tell us a little bit about this, some of the areas that you are seeing the greatest level of impact.
Well, like we mentioned before, we know about the declining traffic, right, and guest frequency. We know about inflation. We know about labor costs. We know value is coming more into the equation. But you add all of these things up, and it's really challenging. And it's just got to be so overwhelming for restaurants. I mean, we're all feeling the impact of this. We didn't put GLPs on here, but you add GLPs in our sector, fast food, that becomes an issue. But then if you dial down and scroll down a little bit more, in fast casual, they're more impacted by inflation, and the QSRs are feeling the most pressure and tension around margin protection and value expectations, which, again, it's not terribly surprising. We know that we've seen, McDonald's going back to their $5 Big Mac, and, people really saying they're under pressure from consumers to really get price sensitive. And so some of these trends we've already seen. The question is just, how long is this stuff going to hang around? Can we break out of it by the end of the year and see some increase and less sensitivity around pricing? That's yet to be seen, right?
Yeah.
If you pair that with some of the data below that I see that you scroll down to now, but they're still pushing promotions and discounts, right? Yeah. I mean, you can't blame restaurants for doing that because they're trying to drive that foot traffic. But I love number 2, which was the most effective strategy for driving revenue and margin. Number 2 is new menu items and LTOs. It's like, let's get creative, right? Let's engage that guest. Talking about the experience again. Let's get creative. Let's put out some new menu items that they're not expecting today. Maybe we do put a little LTO with it. Marketing campaigns, right? Again, how are you talking to your guests? Are you just like sending those canned emails? Or are you really getting to know those guests, and are you personalizing your conversation with them? Right. So that speaks to the data again. Yeah.
I wonder if it went into the Q time machine and went back a few years and looked at the first report that asked a question like this, how many of these items would have been similar then, right? Because it feels like there is a playbook that turns to promotions and discounts, especially during difficult economic times. The new item, the LTO piece of it, has always been a great way to get people's attention and to try and encourage them back in. But of course, they cycle over each other. And so therefore, all you need is one bad LTO and suddenly you have a better year the following. So what's your take on this? Are you finding much ingenuity come through these strategies? And how is the digital setup changing the way in which restaurants are responding to it?
Yeah, I do think we're slowly seeing more, to use your word, ingenuity, creativity, engagement. I think we're seeing restaurants just come out with some really fun and different, ways to engage the guest. And some of that is through their branding. We've seen, some rebranding efforts taking place. We've seen like new store footprint models emerging that are trying to adapt to guests. I did think it was really interesting that loyalty fell out. That's usually a top driving strategy. Loyalty went from the number 1 spot last year to number 4 this year. So to me, that does say they're looking for new methods. They're not just going back to the same, repeat tactics of this 20%, right?
Coming back to that core piece around the guest experience, I think that's what every customer wants. It doesn't matter which segment you're in. It doesn't matter which brand we're talking about. If they get a consistent, great experience, you're setting them up far more likely to return in the future. And that's where, for me, when I then look at some of the operational planned improvements to actually really try and drive that consistency, when you're seeing here the planned improvements that restaurants are trying to make this year, a lot of it is around 62% order flow across all the channels, or helping the team work better across training and stations, right? 52% was that one. more orders that are accurate and ready at the right pickup time. That was 48%.
Yeah.
All of those things seem remarkably basic and simple, but boy, are they difficult, right? And so I think the digital complexity is landing in the kitchen, right? All these extra channels means more tickets, more routing, more timing issues. And that's where I think the best are going to separate themselves from the rest in that space. The ones that figure that out first are going to really be able to find that extra level of value to be able to move forward. And you saw computer vision on one of the things that was shared earlier around AI. I'm speaking to so many folks about computer vision right now, because again, if you've got more eyes on the kitchen, on the actual operation, maybe there are opportunities to find something where you just tweak something a little bit to be able to improve and address some of those challenges that we're talking about. But look, the thing that I think is really exciting about the report is that there's still a lot of confidence, right? There's still a lot of confidence. Customers continue to really adopt anything around digital. Their experiences still are something that restaurant leaders are investing in. And you can see that's also coming through with regards to their investments with AI. So look, the big message for me this year is that restaurants aren't necessarily needing lots more technology. They need technology that works together. That for me seems to be the critical conclusion that I would come from it. But before we wrap up, what were some of the kind of conclusion thoughts that you had around this?
So yes, I think the biggest takeaway is not only technology that can work better together, but really this more modern data first infrastructure. And we talk a lot about this, like this unification of systems, not into one system, but we're working with a lot of partners who are invested in AI. We don't need to necessarily bring the AI, but we bring the foundation of the clean data, right? So making sure that they're prioritizing things that really are going to make a difference in the long term. They might not get the ROI in 6 weeks or 6 months, but they're going to see it over the next year or two. So that really is where we're seeing operators headed, which is more towards this efficient tech stack that is less complex, like you mentioned, and more effective.
Yeah. Jen, how do people get a copy of this report? Because we touched on a few things. There's plenty more on it. What's the best way for them to see it themselves?
On the line. So our website is qbeyond.com. And we'll be posting it around everywhere. Of course, you can get it. You can direct message me. I think they can get it from you too, Carl. And we're even making hard copy books this year that can be ordered. So that's really exciting.
You're going analog. Good for you. Look at that. I'm impressed. I love it. Jen, thank you so much as always to you and the team. I think everyone in the industry always values these types of reports coming through, because it just is difficult, especially for some of the smaller operators that are trying to get an appreciation of what is the landscape, where is it changing, where are things moving? And certainly Q Stated Digital Report is one I always look forward to seeing each year. So thanks again to you and the team. It's no small feat. Appreciate you. Look forward to catching up in person soon. The Digital Restaurant is available for you to follow and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. Watch us, rate us, and subscribe to The Digital Restaurant on YouTube, and follow along on all our social media Digital Restaurant channels. Thanks for listening.